Hello and welcome to this episode of the SNEED-CAST. I am Quentin. I am the executive producer of the SNEED-CAST and aka the guy you might hear them talk about who is behind the camera. That's me. Today's episode is one with Ken and Charles all about ink cartridge care. This episode came out of a visit to a customer that Ken did whenever we were up in San Francisco for a work trip. He noticed that they weren't using the best practices when it comes to ink cartridge care, and he just wanted to jump on an episode with Charles and just give folks some best practices. Just a heads up, we did have a camera mishap for about the first 10 minutes of the episode, so it is audio only for that time. But around 10 minutes or so, I promise you, you will get to see Ken and Charles' beautiful faces to go along with their beautiful voices. With that being said, I'm gonna kick it off to Ken and Charles to give you some great info about ink cartridges. Take it away, guys.
All right, and we are back for our second episode in our new Sneed Coding Solutions SNEED-CAST digital media production studio. Huge shout out to Quentin. I don't know if Alexa did this during the first episode. Quentin has worked hard in getting this set up. We'll be putting together a plan for lots of great content, both on the SNEED-CAST as well as other great digital content across our YouTube channel and other social medias. So stay tuned for that. Make sure you subscribe, like, all those different things that Alexa always talks about down here below. Today, we are fortunate, and I don't know if we're fortunate to have me on the podcast, but we're fortunate to have Charles on the podcast here, my good colleague of many years. I've asked to do an episode here after a recent visit, kind of incognito, I guess, a little bit at a customer site a little while ago that kind of sparked my thought that we need to have a little refresher, so to speak, on cartridge performance and cartridge care. It's such a core part of our business, and I couldn't think of any better guest to have on the podcast to talk about this other than our VP of Technical Services, Charles. So Charles, to just do a quick introduction, I warned you that I was going to make this joke beforehand, but you have almost spent 2 decades in the inkjet coding space now that I was calculating this prior to our recording.
Very true, very true. Just 1 year shy of you.
Yeah, 1 year.
So we've both been at this for a little while.
Yeah, which is just, well, I mean, that's tangent alert. I could go on for a long time about that. But I only bring that up obviously to make fun of how old you are, but also because I just want to highlight, obviously you've been at this for a while.
Yes.
The ins and outs of inkjet coding, multiple technologies. Beyond just, obviously we focus on thermal inkjet, which is what we're here to talk about, and you have a pretty strong background in dealing with a lot of different technologies, comparing all the different things related to operations, repairs, maintenance, and these types of things. So the reason I wanted to talk about this today is really just our core concept, the core product that we sell. The SNEED-JET line of printers is all focused around our core message of keep coding simple.
That's what we try to do.
Yep, and that comes from Brian, who started the company now back 7-8 years ago. We just had our company picnic. Lots of fun trivia questions there that even I'm struggling to remember now. But it was all funded around his concept of having coming from a background like you, continuous inkjet, that inkjet coding should be simple. Right? It shouldn't be complicated.
It was. I mean, don't get me wrong. For decades and decades, it was very complicated. CIJ is a great technology, but it has, for all its advantages, it has just as many drawbacks.
You're right. And there's a time, we won't even run away from that. There's a time and a place for CIJ, certainly.
Definitely.
Because for every technology, there are
But
limitations.
we are closing that gap quickly.
Exactly. Not to get too sidetracked on that, the main thing, right, is ultimately like what we've chosen to focus on, and from Brian's experience, what he founded the company on, was the fact that inkjet coding should be something that is simple, cost-effective, easy to use, easy to install, that doesn't cause all kinds of headaches and problems. And that's where we thermal inkjet kind of developed and came into the industrial space around that same time. And so we've kind of all come up, we know it very well. But at the end of the day, thermal inkjet technology is, whether you're doing the HP cartridge, there's Funai, there's multiple players out there that make thermal inkjet coding printers. But at the end of the day, the core concept of it all is why we're here today, and that is the fact that it's all centered around this cartridge, right?
Yes, it is.
And so just without getting too into depth, because I really just want to talk about cartridge care, because that's what leads to the performance. But we have other content on this, and happy to maybe do another episode in depth. But the technology itself, at its core, the fundamental fact of it all is the fact, repetitive. The print heads inside the cartridge. Sorry, guys, it's been a while since I've done sales calls now that I have an awesome team of rock stars that handle all of these calls. But the print head's inside of this cartridge. And so every time you change your cartridge, you're getting a brand new print head. There's no ongoing print head maintenance, ongoing print head service. Some of these other technologies we referenced that you have an experience with, Charles, you can testify. Well, so the fact that most of the time it's the print head that's the issue.
Correct. So, you just said, the ongoing print head maintenance, one of the things that we try to eliminate, but ultimately one of the great things about the cartridge is that's where your ink is stored and that's where your print head is at. So when you change out the cartridge, you get a fresh print head in there. So there's not an ongoing maintenance contract or anything like that. So like with CIJ or some of your other piezoelectric heads or anything else like that, where you're going to have maintenance done or change it out on a regular basis, because when the ink supply has gone out of the cartridge, you're put in a new cartridge, you get a fresh print head that goes along with that. And again, that's part of our Keep Coding Simple. That's one of the reasons why the motto developed is when we send this out to a customer, they don't have to have somebody that's very technical on staff.
Right.
You don't have to have a full department of technicians or engineers to maintain the print system. You don't have to have a regular service contract to have somebody come in. If there's a problem, that's where my team comes in, and we handle majority of all problems over the phone or through our help desk. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on.
Yeah, no, you're getting a little ahead of the game here, Charles. But no,
exactly.
You're setting up, doing a great job. Exactly. So the print head's inside this cartridge, and again, that's whether it's our HP cartridge, our 1-inch cartridge, or even the Funai cartridge on all of our systems. They're all focused around this technology. And so what really that comes down to, and my main point today is what that means is then, if that's the case, if everything you're saying is true, that print head is in here, and that's the vital component to everything. Right, that's what puts the ink on the product. That's what prints your date code and all of these things. So then we want to make sure we're taking proper care of this cartridge.
Exactly.
Because everything that you just promised doesn't happen unless you're taking proper care of the cartridge.
Exactly.
And despite the fact that it is low maintenance, practically zero maintenance, and service contracts are gone, all of these things, there are still things that are very important around cartridge care that folks need to be cognizant of.
Very much so.
Right, and that's what we're going to talk about and that's what to kind of start this off. I saw this recent customer that I incognito got to watch their operator with one of our handheld printers, and they were struggling with the fact that they were having some problem prints. It wasn't printing the way they needed it to, and I watched them do all manner of things from shaking it. To also grabbing a paper towel, a shop towel, I think, of some manner, and then they were rubbing the face of the print head, and then also one thing that actually in some pictures I shared with our sales team, Daniel was bright enough to observe that the printer had also just been sitting on the shelf for just with the cartridge inside the printer, outside of the case. So there was a number of faux pas.
Whole bunch of no-nos in there.
Yeah, a lot of faux pas that I just kind of like, this makes me believe. And I was, we were talking before we started recording, Charles, is that we do our best. All credit to Santos and Daniel and John and your team when they interact with customers beforehand and during the printer setup and everything else. We're always we're very, because we understand and they understand this cartridge is what means everything. So we tell them before purchase, we're very clear about what needs to be, what the expectations are with the cartridge. Your team is very clear about that when they're setting up the printer. Now we fast forward 6 months, maybe a year. There's been turnover at a facility. There's new operators in there, or the operator that's using the printer is not the same person that bought the printer, et cetera. All these different things, and so that's like, again, I use this example of this operator that's doing a myriad of things that we don't want them to be doing through no fault of their own. They just aren't aware. So that's why I wanted to. We're doing a number of things here, including bringing the big dog Charles in to talk about this, and we're creating some content to try to just get the word out, right? We want to take care of the cartridge. So that's kind of why we're here. That's the set up the stage and everything. So getting back to that though, Charles, when we talk about your team, you have a strong team, and because of this technology, we sell all over the United States, North America, even Europe and Australia. where we're able to do support with this technology without having people local. We don't need to send service techs out. And then again, that's back to the simplicity of this technology. That being said, when customers are calling in with an issue, what would you generally think or guesstimate, what percentage of calls end up being cartridge related?
It's about 30%. So 1 out of every 3 calls is somebody that's got an issue with their cartridge. That number has come down thanks to some of the things that we've talked about. Some of the information that we try to deliver to customers, or other online assets and things like that, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. But still, even through all of that, there's 1 out of every 3 calls is cartridge related.
Right.
And we'd love to do our best to bring that down. So adding more content, adding more things that can reach that operator, that can reach the individuals, is what we're trying to do every single day.
Perfect. Yeah, and that's kind of what I suspected. So hopefully we can try to get some more information out, give this information out ahead of time, and let folks how they can prevent and avoid these types of calls. So I'm putting myself in that customer's shoe. I'm trying to put myself in their situation. Something happens. At the end of the day, they're trying to print. It's not printing. They call A339 coding extension 2. Also A339263464 extension 2. Quentin, if you can make sure that we put that right there. They talk to one of your amazing technicians, but they just say, my cartridge isn't working or my printer isn't printing, right? That's typically how they open the conversation, right? So exactly. What happens at that point? And then what are the common typical cartridge related symptoms, I guess, that spark that call?
So you're right on. So a customer calls in and it's always, hey, my cartridge isn't printing, or hey, I've got lines through my print, something along those lines. And from there, just to diagnose the problem, figure out what's happened so we can get that customer up and going. First question is, of course, if it's not, hey, my cartridge isn't printing, how long has that cartridge been left out? If we're dealing with our water-based or solvent-based cartridges, they have different handling considerations. So a water-based cartridge can be left in a printer for an extended period of time, whereas a solvent-based cartridge, you want to make sure that you take out of the printer after 10 minutes if you're not using it. But an operator, just like the one you mentioned, they're in the middle of doing their job, and something comes up, a machine breaks down, they get called to do something else. If it's one of our handheld printers, they take that printer, they set it down, and they go take care of whatever. Well, it's been sitting out, exposed to the air. The ink doesn't know where it's at. The ink doesn't care where it's at. The ink is going to do what the ink is supposed to do and dry. So that's where they come in and they're like, hey, cartridge isn't printing. How long has it been in the printer? Oh, we left it there overnight, or I set it down, while I went and took care of this, and it took a couple of hours. Okay, some of those times are, we can get that cartridge recovered. So we'll start instructing them on the proper processes for wiping the cartridge and cleaning the cartridge. If it's solvent-based and it's been out for a couple of hours, again, those can typically be recovered, but they'll start to see problems over time the more that happens.
All right.
So just different things that that come up, but typically that's what we get when customers are calling is either it's not printing at all or there's lines through it.
Definitely, you touched a lot on all the key bullet points I want to talk on here, so that could potentially lead to some of these issues that customers are seeing. So let's first talk about proper storage when we're not using the ink cartridge.
So first off, one of the reasons why I brought these samples in here and I left them in their particular bags is so that to indicate that until you're actually going to use the cartridge, leave it in the sealed bag. That way you limit the air exposure to the cartridge, no matter what type it is. And then when you're ready to use it, then you open it up. I always recommend that at that point you put a date on there, because if you have multiple cartridges in play or anything like that, or at least when that cartridge was open, because they do have a shelf life. They don't last indefinitely. A cartridge shouldn't last you 3 years. They do have some chemistry to them that starts to break down over time. Not going to try and get too technical today, but we just want to make sure that you understand that, hey, when you receive this, if you buy 2 of them and you're only using 1 of them, leave the other one in the packaging and only open it when you're ready to use it.
And then once they do open them, and we're going to end up having to do a demo. So I'm going to go ahead and open one anyway.
Got scissors right over there for you.
There we go. But then and then they use it for a little bit, right? And then they're going to go and do an operation run. and then they're going to finish their operation. We're just going to talk about just daily storage, right? So as everybody can see, hopefully Quentin will be able to do a quick zoom in here. If not, we have other still pictures, definitely. This has
Those scissors real quick.
a plastic clip. All of our cartridges come with some sort of a print head clip, cartridge clip, print head protection cover. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of storing the cartridge with this clip? Like, this is not a clip that should be disposed of
Correct.
in any kind of way. Once they turn it on, they should save this clip, so at the end of the day, and I'll let you kind of take it from here.
So I will go ahead and show you that our ST100 cartridge does not come with the clip. That is the water-based. We do have them available if you're in a high dust environment. You want to make sure they're stored. Just let us know. They're extremely inexpensive, or on your first purchase, we can include that with it. That being said, I grabbed the Funai cartridge also to let you know that that one also does come with a very similar clip. It's not identical, but same premise. When the cartridge is not in use, you want to make sure that that is being stored in the clip. So you've got it in the printer, you're out printing with it, and if it's a solvent-based or water-based, whatever, when you're done printing for the day or it's going to be shut down for a little while, go ahead and take that out. Make sure to store it firmly in the clip. It's got a nice little piece of plastic there on the end, a little piece of rubber that helps to seal those nozzles off and make sure that you don't get any air to it, dust or anything else while it's being stored. But that's one of the most important things, is making sure that when it's out of the printer, again, out of the printer, you're not doing your best not to store it in the printer, that you're then taking it and keeping it in that clip. Now, as far as storage goes, depending on the cartridge, again, 2 different cartridges. When they're being stored, this is one of the things that Ken was used to in years past, but there's been some different things change in the technologies. This cartridge, your HP cartridge, you typically want to store either horizontally or vertically. The Funai cartridge, however, is either horizontal or stored down. So two different storage ideas based on the type of cartridge that you're using, and that just comes down to the internal structures that are on each cartridge and how and their potential uses. Just to kind of give you a little information on that particular type of storage.
Perfect. No, that's actually, and that all has to do, like you said, with the chemistry inside of the cartridge and how the liquid, the flows and everything, and storing properly. And then you touched on something, and perfect too, in terms of segue, I want to get into it anyway. We talked about water-based versus solvent-based inks. So just a real quick, high-level, big difference in terms of use cases. Water-based inks are going to be our ST100, our SF100, and our SI200 across the Infinity, Freedom, and Titan range, and then the XL. We have SX100 as well. Those are all water-based inks, and essentially what that means is that's the base of the ink that the ink travels in, and it's how it really has to do with how fast the ink dries. And ultimately, when you hear water-based ink, that's for printing on porous materials. Think paper, think boxes, your secondary packaging, big paper bags,
Exactly, yeah.
those types of things. And then the solvent-based inks that you mentioned, those are fast-drying inks. Key word, we'll get back to that. Fast-drying inks that are meant to dry fast on hard surfaces like glass, plastic, bottle coating, can coating, and those are going to be like our 300 series.
Correct.
So our SI300, SIX30, ST300, ST301, and so on and so forth. But that's kind of that key difference. Now, going back on that, like, so when we talk about, you referenced, our water-based ink doesn't come with a cartridge cap because it being a water-based ink is more durable and it can be more exposed to the air because it's not quick drying and drying on the print head.
Exactly.
Right, but that's why it's all the more important if you do have a fast-drying ink that is a solvent-based ink in the 300 series. That's where like capping and storing the cartridge consistently is very important to your longevity of that cartridge. On that note, talking about proper storage, there's a phrase that we like to throw around called decap time, which is basically when we talk about intermittent printing.
Right.
And I think this probably comes into play more often than not for our handheld users or our users that are in high volume situations, because that leaves time for the cartridge to sit idle. So I guess if you can, just kind of to set that stage for you, if you can explain to folks what decap time is and why it's important to be knowledgeable around
So
it.
the decap time has a a much different definition than the one I'm about to give you. Again, we're trying to not go technical on this. And so the easiest way that I've been able to find to explain to customers is this is your cap. Okay.
Yeah.
So decap is how long it can be without the covers. How long it can be without a cap. So for our solvent-based cartridges, on average, 10 minutes is about as long as you want it out there without the cap on. It's like being out in the sun. You don't want too much on your head. You got to put your cap on after a little while. Silly reference, but just keep that going. That's really what that meaning is for. You really want to make sure that, hey, it's out exposed to the air, and it's not doing anything. There's no ink flowing through the nozzles, so that ink is going to try and dry what's on the outside there.
And it's a fast drying ink.
It's a fast drying ink, exactly. So what you're not going to be using it, take it out, make sure you put your cap, your clip on, and store it either recommended way.
So basically, if you're doing, let's say you have a scheduled smoke break, 10-15 minute smoke break.
Take it out.
Pop that cartridge. If you got lunch break, 30 minutes or more, take that cartridge out.
You got a machine that goes down that you're looking at, that repair is going to take, and I've been in lots of production environments. This is typically what happens is something messes up down the line, unexpected, and you got to stop and, whether it's one of our inline printers or handheld printers, with nothing's passing by it, it's not printing, so it's just sitting there idle. That's when you want to, hey, this repair I know is going to take a minimum of 20 minutes or an hour, whatever that number is. Take the 30 seconds to take the cartridge out of the print head, put it into its cap, and go do your repair, because that same 5 or 10 seconds that it took to take out is what it's going to take to put that cartridge back in and start back up again.
Yep. And in that regard, we've seen a lot of customers. I think, Charles, you'd agree. Like sometimes they'll have like a pouch or a bag if it's in an inline situation that is like tied right next to the print head with the clip in it or something, so they can just keep it right there. Seen a lot of interesting creative solutions there. Of course, if it's a handheld situation, you definitely, I know we've seen this time and again, or you don't want to leave the cartridge in the printer when you go and put that handheld printer inside the case. It does come with a really awesome, really cool, like James Bond spy case to store it in, and that's great. We want you to store it in there, but let's take the cartridge out first and put it in a clip. There's even a spot to put the cartridge inside of there with a clip on.
Right.
And we want to make sure, especially when we're talking about these solvent-based fast-drying inks. Now, all that being said, again, back to my scenario, we got operators in the field, folks that are doing their best. They're just trying to hit their production quotas and do what they need to do. All well intended, and sometimes mistakes happen. Sometimes a cartridge gets left in the machine, cartridge gets left in an inline printer, it gets left in the handheld printer, and whatever, and people start to have issues. What are some of the first steps that your team is telling folks to take when they're experiencing some lines in the print or some print quality issues, or maybe not even printing at all? Maybe you can talk through some of those different things that folks should be doing at that point.
Definitely. So the first thing is we want to address the nozzles, which is on the end of the cartridge. So that's typically where the majority of everything is happening is right up here.
So real quick on this, Quentin, if post-edit, if we can do a close-up shot of this print head so that folks can see there are two lines of nozzles here. It'd be really good from a visual perspective to show what Charles is about to explain.
So the nozzle is what we're dealing with, and that's what's been exposed to the air and where the ink is coming out of. So that's where it's beginning to dry. The first thing that we're going to do is utilize a lint-free cloth. If you don't mind, we've got our lint-free cloths.
I'll open it for you.
Yep.
I'm a really good Vanna White. I have the long blonde hair to go with it. Go ahead, Charles. I'll get this ready for you.
And a little gray in there too. But anyway.
Whoa.
So the first thing that we're going to ask them to do is wipe the cartridge. Now, wiping the cartridge, we like to use a piece of foam, something soft, mouse pad, something along those lines. Basically something that's going to have a little give, but also push back against the cartridge as we're wiping it. As you can see, Vanna is setting out the wipe here onto the foam. One of the things that we want to do is, and what a lot of customers don't do, is they'll try and leave this in the print head and then try and do a little wipe like this. yeah, I get some ink out of this, great, but we're not actually pressing into those nozzles or removing any dried ink or debris. So we're going to take this and we're going to stretch it back out over here onto our piece of foam.
Do you want me to hold
Oh,
that?
nope, I got it right here. Thanks for giving me a chair with an arm on it here. And then we're just going to take and we're going to press into that, put a little pressure on it. You're not trying to push it all the way to the floor, but just a little bit of pressure, and then we're just going to drag it. Now, do that a couple of times, and we're going to end up with some nice lines on the paper, on the cloth. And what that's going to do is remove any dried ink or debris that's on there. If by some chance they've left the cartridge in there overnight, it's one of our fast drying inks, it's likely that they're going to have to do that more than a couple of times, and even try and print with it in between. Again, if it's one of our fast drying inks, it's done its job. It's dried. It just didn't do it where you wanted it to happen.
Right. Yeah, it's drying inside those nozzles.
Yep.
It's a fast drying ink. Again, keyword from earlier, if for anybody that was listening. But again, so I want to make sure, touching back on that left and right nozzle. So the first thing we want to do is actually a settings test, because it may just be an issue inside one of those channels, right? We have a left and a right, and they can go and they can change that inside the printer settings before, and that's a potential solution.
So
as
there's
well.
one of the potential solutions is, so depending on the model of printer you have, there's a couple of different potential solutions that go along with that. So like we've talked about our handheld printer. In the settings there, we've got a setting to where you can either adjust to the left or right nozzle. So if your printer is currently printing out of the left nozzle and you start to see lines or missing print sections, things like that, you can go into the settings, change over to the right nozzle, and see if that performs any better.
Okay.
So, and a lot of times when that happens, that's due to a high dust environment. It doesn't even have to be a really high dust environment. If you're printing on cardboard, you have corrugate dust. Whether you really see it all around or not, it's there. So just keep in mind that those nozzles, when they have ink on them, they're wet, and wet things are going to grab hold of any sort of dust or anything that's in the air, and so that's where that's going to come from, and it's going to slowly clog those up. Part of that is a little maintenance on the daily. Every time you get your customer that you went to go visit, if they were doing the proper things every day, that instead of storing the cartridge in the printer, when they got into the production line that morning, the cartridge is potentially stored in its nice little clip. The very first thing they're going to do is take it out of the clip. They're going to find their cloth and their soft surface, and they're going to give it a quick little wipe, just one or two little wipes to remove any dried ink or debris from the previous day, and then they're going to put it in the printer, and typically you're going to have great printing from then on the rest of the day. And if you follow that same mode each and every day, you're going to extend the life of your cartridge and be happy with what you're getting every day.
Again, so basically, cartridge care equals cartridge performance.
Yes.
I think ultimately, you kind of touched on some things I already wanted to ask you about, but I just kind of want to highlight how often, even in a non-issue environment, like everything is peachy keen, you're saying that we should still get in the habit of wiping the print head on a daily basis, or not, like,
because there's no perfect environment. There's whether it's operators that get distracted and leave it out, whether it's a high production facility where you've got dust in the air, whether it's a production facility where you're extruding plastic, or any number of things. I've been to places where you can eat off the floor. They're super clean. But even that, there's still something that's happening around that's going to cause something in that cartridge.
Vibrations.
Vibrations of air, being around heat, heaters, ovens, things like that. Again, just the simple presence of boxes, it's going to produce little particles. So you've mentioned, some of the faux pas. So it might be a nice little segue into.
Well, I definitely, I will. I just want to a couple of quick things. So basically, then, just to put a cap on that, or a bow on that. Cap on that. I didn't even mean to do that. Sometimes when you're a dad, those dad jokes, they just
come out.
They just happen. But no, really, just to emphasize though, but like getting in a daily print head wiping kind of habit is basically like every time, whether you're using a handheld printer, you're getting it out of the case. That's nice because the case has foam inside of it. get your wipe out, wipe that print head before you put it in, or even on the inline situation, wipe that printer before you
Right.
pop it in and turn it on. And even I've also heard maybe before you put it in the cartridge clip too.
Yes.
Is a good perhaps even a good step. I mean, it takes 5 seconds, right?
Correct.
What I mean, at the end of the day, how much hassle does that save a customer if they just get in that habit and they're doing that every single
A
shift?
lot of headaches. So
You
if
know?
because if you're taking that time every single morning or every night when when you take it out and when you're putting it away, if you're taking that time, then you're really taking the time to understand that the cartridge does require a little bit of maintenance. Low maintenance,
Oh, yeah.
not zero maintenance, but very, very low maintenance.
That presents a good opportunity to just again go back and highlight, based on your experience. This may sound like a lot in the context of this conversation, but when we compare it to other technologies,
Oh.
in terms of startup and print head prep and shutdown,
All in all, if you're talking 30 seconds to a minute a day,
yeah.
really
so-
once everything's in place and you've got it and you've got the routine down, just like taking it out when you go to fix another problem, it's a few seconds. It really is not a lot of time compared to washing down a print head for a CIJ or the other maintenance that goes along with that. This is a minimal amount of time for a maximum return.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then on that note too, just to highlight, all of our ink orders, every time you order ink, of course, we always include one of our wipes, our Sneed proprietary wipes. It's got a little step-by-step instructions and diagram to basically going over what Charles just explained. And there's a QR code here. And we're going to talk about that QR code. Again, this comes with every single time you order ink. We always include one complimentary wipe. And for those heavy users out there, we do also sell them in bulk. You can get by a case there are hundreds of the case now. We recently, they used to be 75 to a case, so I had to double check. So, but like, let's just say in a pinch, production environments, I don't have a wipe. Or my Sneed wipe, I've used it and I don't have a Sneed inkjet cartridge wipe. What are my options? What should I look for? Can I use a paper towel? Can I use a Kleenex? Or what should I be looking for if in that type of situation?
So refer back to one of the words that I used previously, lint-free. So that's really what you're looking for. You don't want anything that's got particles. Like a Kleenex, when you take it out of the box, you can see the stuff go everywhere. That's lint. You don't want that sticking to those wet nozzles, getting into those microscopic nozzles, and clogging them up.
So Kleenex good for snot, bad for ink.
Very true. Just like paper towels, great for picking up a mess or a spill, bad for your...
Bouncy, quick. Sorry.
But yeah, you definitely don't want to use those on your ink cartridges. A little hack, if you happen to have lens cloths, they're typically lint-free, but they're a little more expensive because somebody put the word lens on there. One of my military friends happened to let me know that when they were when they were serving, one of their go-to things for cleaning mirrors or glass or their boots or anything else to make sure that there wasn't lint was coffee filters.
Oh.
Nobody thinks about those things, but nobody wants lint in their coffee, so there's no particulates on there. They make a really good job of using that. So as a desperate one, you can always go into the kitchen, find a coffee filter, grab one of those.
And key thing is, again, you're not trying to wipe the head like this. You don't want to put it on a hard. You want to find some sort of soft surface like foam or something that you can lay the filter on top of. Sorry. I just wanted
That's good. The soft surface. One of the things I wanted to tell you about is one of the interesting calls that I've gotten in the past was I was going over potential causes with the operator. The operator ended up being one of the managers, which is a little more troubling at this. And come to find out, because they knew that there was dried ink on there, they tried to remove the dried ink, not with any sort of solvent or using a lint-free cloth. They actually broke out sandpaper.
Oh, I thought maybe they...
No. They went and grabbed a little piece of fine grit sandpaper and basically scuffed up everything. And
I think that cartridge was dead.
yeah, it was no good after that. But just as an example of the links that people will go to.
No sandpaper.
That is nothing. None of the Mr. Clean, Miracle Cleaners or Scrubbers or
Oh,
whatever.
Clorox wipes?
No
Or none of
Clorox
that?
wipes, nothing like that.
So basically, so another thing too then is lint-free is key.
Yes.
And then dry or wet? What
So
are we
we're always
there?
going to start with a dry cloth.
Okay.
We're always going to start with a dry cloth and do everything we can with that. Now, each one of these inks, depending on the type of ink that it is, if we're talking about the solvent base or the water base is just that, it's water. You can use a small amount of water on a cloth to help loosen up some of that dried ink. Some of our water-based inks, such as the SI200, have some other additions in there, so that's why we're not going to tell you to do that every single time, but it's not going to harm it if you use a little water on there. However, one of our solvent-based, water doesn't always play nice with that, and you can turn your ink into glue really quickly, so do not use water when trying to clean one of those. The SDS is available for each one of our inks. And the reason why I mentioned that is because that'll tell you what the solvent base is. I'm going to go ahead and disclose that to you on our ST300 and ST301. These are ethanol based. So if you happen to have access to a 99% ethanol, again, I'm going to say 99%. Why? Because that's all ethanol. If you find a 50%, that means the other 50% is water. We've already said that doesn't play well with the inks. So 99% ethanol, you can put a little bit out on the cloth, and that is going to help to dissolve the ink. That's the solvent, that's
If
what
there's
it's
stuff that's
soluble.
really dried in there. Yeah.
Exactly. It's not going to solve 100% of the problems because if that ink is dried so far into the nozzles because it's been left out for days on end, there's not
Like
a
the
whole lot
weekend?
that's going to, like the weekend. There's not a whole lot that's going to do that we're going to do with that. You'll need to send it in and let my team see if they can recover it to help you out with that. But just one of those nifty little tricks that you can use, but understand what the base of your ink is. Because again, with our SI300 or SIX30, that solvent, it has a little bit of alcohol in there, but the majority is MEK, another solvent. That one's a little harder to get hold of. And also one of the reasons why it has a different set of materials or substrates that it will work on in different throw distances.
Excellent. No, that was all really great. Well, so we touched on I'm looking through my checklist here. This is all great. So then, okay, well, you kind of, again, you always set me up with the perfect segue, Charles. It's like you and I have known each other for 10 years or something.
Almost 2 decades.
So we've given some tips here. We have, okay, so again, if they didn't watch this video or whatever, they are watching this video, there's a little QR code here. And they didn't take any notes or whatever, they can go where?
To our help desk.
And what is that? That's
help.sneedcoating.com.
right here, help.sneedcoating.com. And on there, what can they find in terms of like learning about cartridge care and troubleshooting? Do we have videos? Do we have
We've got
what's on
videos,
there?
we've got documents, basically some how-tos and videos that show them how to wipe the cartridge, as well as videos on all our printers and those sorts of things. And then you also have access to the SDS on our help desk now to make sure that if you need that for your company records or just to know a little bit more about the materials that you're using, it's there for you. One of the other things that's available on that help desk is a direct link so you can chat with one of our experts.
That was my next question.
You've got the everything that you need there for the beginning processes up to and including contacting us so that we can help you through those next steps or even get your cartridge sent in for our recovery program.
So that was going to be my next thing. So then they go through all these different things. They've done everything they can. They hit the road. They hit a roadblock. I can't get this cartridge printing. Next step is basically through that help desk or through A339 Coding Extension 2. They can call your team. They can email support@sneedcoding.com. They can go on the help desk, help.sneedcoding.com, where there's chat. And on there, there's also a booking calendar.
Yes.
So that you can even, depending on your preference, we're here for you. You want to chat, you want to call, you want video. Your team is available Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Central Time, basically, to help with those things. To contact you guys. Hey, I've done all these steps. This is what I've already done. It's probably helpful because your team's going to ask, why don't you try this, try this?
Right.
If you've already done those steps, identify that ahead of time. Hey, I've already gone through the help desk. I've done the wipes. I've done this. This is how I store it. The more information your team has up front, the faster they can get to a resolution.
Exactly.
And if it gets to that point where they say, hey, you know what? it sounds like you've done your best. If you'd like, we can issue an RA number, and you guys can send cartridges or receive cartridges, and then your team has some extra tricks that they try to recover that potentially for the customer. Is there anything along those lines, anything on that end that you wanted to add to, or does
So the recovery program, first I'd like to let everybody know is we don't charge for that. So that is a free service we offer to our customers because we understand that, again, just like Ken mentioned earlier, you're going to have operators that different people are turn over. The person that bought it, that got the instructions, the person that went through the training may not be the same person that uses it every single day.
or have effectively communicated that
Or have they,
information?
communication being not effective in a
We
company.
don't have that problem
At all. No,
Our-
never. Yeah, no.
Nope.
We're just like every other company. Things happen. Somebody drops the ball. Things get lost when you're moving things around and you have new people come up. So, with that being said, yes, you can contact us. We'll give you a ticket number. You'll send the cartridge in to us. We'll go through all the different processes. That we have available at our hands, utilizing all the skills and tools that we've learned over time, and do the best we can to recover that cartridge for you.
Excellent. And then I think we almost covered just about everything. There's really two things left I want to talk about. Circling back again to the simplicity of everything, our focus, keep coding simple. We want to minimize headaches. We want to eliminate as much maintenance and service, downtime especially. We've talked to enough manufacturers over the years, from Fortune 100 companies to mom and pops. Like, production time is extremely valuable, and it's irreplaceable once it's lost. So all of that being said, we talked about all these different things. I got to wipe this cartridge. I got to send it into you guys. It takes 2 days to send it. And then you guys need a day with it. It takes and I'm 5 days with that. Like, and all of that being said is basically like, well, what do we recommend, I guess, is what I'm kind of leading the witness. What should you always have ready?
You should always have a backup. So
backup cartridge.
Yeah, a backup cartridge. So whenever I got into this industry, as Ken mentioned, I cut my teeth on CIJ printers. In your high production environments, I thought it was funny that they had to have 2, maybe 3 printers on hand.
I've been in multiple where they've had multiple CIJ printers.
Yes.
Running in the background.
Just ready to go, so that when that one went down that was on the line, not if, when it went down, that they could minimize the amount of downtime by just shutting the line down for a minute or 10 minutes or however long it took to wheel the one out of the way and wheel the new one back up there and then get it adjusted just right, so that then they could start production up again. As opposed to, it's one of the reasons why we keep coding simple, is thermal inkjet allows us to just take the one cartridge out that's causing problems, put in a replacement cartridge, and again, like I said earlier, that same 10 to 20 seconds that you're talking about for taking the cartridge out to wipe it or put it in its clip is the same amount of time it takes to take another cartridge, pop it in, and be ready to go and get your production line up and going. So really minimizing downtime.
But that's exactly, and I kind of struggled to get to that point here to set it up, but that's essentially it, right? We can't guarantee that issues aren't going to rise. There's too many variables. We believe this is the best suited technology to keep things as simple as possible and maximize the uptime, because if and when situations do arise, you swap that cartridge out and your production line keeps moving. So you can still get to meet your production deadlines, you get to get your orders out, and you don't have to worry about shutting down part of your production. And then in the meantime, while production is running, we'll help you get that other cartridge resolved and take care of that. So that for me, at least, all the conversations I've had with business owners, maintenance managers, over the years, that to me is just so critical and huge.
This gives me an opportunity to tell a story about one of our customers. I'm not going to name names there, but it is a very high production facility. They're printing on film, and it's going 24/7. And we love that customer because they buy a lot of ink. Okay. And one of the things that we were disheartened to find out about was they were going through a lot of ink cartridges that they didn't need to. So after finally contacting us, and their complaint was, "Hey, I'm going through all these cartridges. They only last this long. This is what's happening." Come to find out that the operator, if there was any small line or anything like that in the print, He wasn't even trying to wipe the cartridge, do anything with it. He was literally taking the cartridge out of the print head, tossing it in a box, grabbing a brand new cartridge, putting it in the printer, and starting the production line back up going. He was doing his job, trying to keep things going.
Almost too well.
Almost too well. We'll come to find out he's got a box full of cartridges sitting there, and of course, his boss calls us, going, what the heck was this? Is just money that's sitting there. So we take the time to have the conversation with them about what are their practices, what are they doing whenever they start to see that. And while the individual I was speaking with knew those things, they hadn't been communicated down to the operator. So now that customer does not have those sorts of issues because we took the time to schedule a training with them. It was 10 to 15 minutes. It was a video call. Had one of my technicians kind of go over these same sorts of things with them, so that they knew that, hey, if that production couldn't be down, great. You take that spare cartridge, pop it in, take the one that you've got out, clean it a few times, put it in its storage clip, and then move on. That's that cartridge is now ready for the next time that you're ready to put it back in there. We were able to help out that customer and recover a number of their cartridges. Some of them were unrecoverable because they'd been sitting in that box for weeks.
I had a question about that.
Yeah, so there's nothing we could do about those. When the ink is dry, it's dry. There's not.
The
not
longer
much.
it sits, the harder it is to recover.
Exactly. Right? So but now that customer went from sending in 60 plus cartridges to now we only hear from them a couple of times a year, 1 or 2 cartridges at a time. And again, same sort of deal. Somebody set it aside and forgot about it, or didn't put it in the clip and forgot about it, and it sat there over the weekend.
So, and on that, that's the question, right? So, like, if you do experience a trouble cartridge, for whatever reason there may be, or whatever caused it, and you try to recover it as soon as possible, go through the cleaning method, go through the wiping method as much as you can, and then don't just put it don't just put it on your desk or in your drawer or in a box and wait a month and then call us, because then there's even less chances we can help, right?
Right.
So the sooner you realize there's a problem with the cartridge, contact us, and then we can get the ball rolling. Because again, the longer the ink sets, the longer the solvents sit, and that liquid sits, the longer it dries inside of those nozzles. Great conversation. There's only really just one other quick question to kind of talk about, just because it's a little bit unique. More so than everything we've kind of talked about is just kind of our general black inks, dye-based inks. But two, we have a couple of colors that are pretty big sellers for us, and they're slightly different in terms of just performance and care, and that's our white and yellow ink, because they are slightly pigmented as opposed to all of our black inks are dye-based. And again, without getting into a chemistry lesson, pigments is where the colors come from. But essentially, pigments means that the light doesn't shine through it. A dye-based ink, it shines through. So a dye-based white or yellow wouldn't show up on like black or red because it would show the black. Right. Whereas a pigment, it actually leaves that pigment on there. So that's the extent of which I want to set that up. But it is important because they being pigmented inks has an effect on how it sits in the cartridge.
Correct. So in it. Since you've already touched on, there's a little difference between our colored inks. We do offer different colors in our Titan series printers. Our red and our green and our blue, those are dye-based. And they will stay in the solution. In other words, they're going to stay dissolved inside that solvent for a lot longer than the pigment is. And by a lot longer, the majority of the life of that cartridge, you're not going to have to do much else besides wipe it. Now with the pigment based, because of the nature of that pigment, the chemistry behind it, over time it's going to what we call precipitate. In other words, it's just going to fall out.
Like if you get a jar full of Galveston beach water and you let it sit for about 5 minutes, all the sand comes down to the bottom. Exactly.
So you just when that cartridge is just sitting there, not being used. Those pigments are going to slowly separate, and they're going to drop out of it. So the first thing, if your cartridge has been sitting there for a little while, just like James Bond, you want your martini shaken, not stirred. So you're going to just give it a nice little swirl around. That way you can get those pigments distributed back into the solution again, and that way you're going to get the print quality out of it that you're looking for. Some of the key indicators are a very light color. Let's say our white or yellow. You're used to seeing it very opaque. In other words, it's very nice, bright. A very bright print on your dark background, it'll start to get a little lighter or even silvery in color because it doesn't have a whole lot left in there. That's the white. The white's going to look a little silvery. The yellow's going to have a little more of a bronze color. But the majority of it is it's not going to be as dark as what you're used to. So you take it out of the printer, give it a little wipe on the nozzles to make sure everything's cleared off of there. Put it in the cartridge clip, and you're just going to for 10 seconds just do a nice little swirl on there. You're not trying to turn it into a milkshake and shake it all up because that's going to create air bubbles in there.
Okay.
And those air bubbles, if they get in your nozzles, now you're talking about blocked and other situations. We just want to do a nice little swirl. I had a customer in the past that thought it was okay to just throw it against the wall. He even had a particular wall that he threw it against and it had ink splatters on the wall. Yeah, this is customers come up with some really interesting ideas. It worked for him up until the point where it broke the seal, and now the cartridge doesn't work.
Splatter on the wall.
Yeah. So don't do that. With our pigmented inks, just a nice little swirl does 90% of the work for you, and then the rest of it is just giving it a good little wipe, and you're going to get that color back. And performance is exceptional out of those two.
Again, compared to like other type, if you want to print white or yellow ink with other technologies.
Well, yeah, you take let's take a CIJ printer, low end if your basic production environments, $6,000-$7,000, you're into a CIJ printer. As soon as you say pigment, now we're up over 12, up to the $15,000 range. So you've really increased your cost of operations right there.
And your cost of ownership goes up, more maintenance, more service, all these things. So, quick question on that, all good stuff on so just a nice little swirl. Is that basically though, like, is it a good idea or not? I'm generally asking, to do that basically, if I'm using it, should I make that part of my startup? Like in the morning, if I go Monday through Friday, I work one shift. Should I just say, when I pop in just like wiping it, should I just make that part just a little like that as part of the process?
It's not going to hurt anything. Again, it's just 10 seconds. You don't have to really time it. You just sit there, count to 10 or whatever, take it out of the clip, wipe it, pop it in your printer. You're ready to go.
Yeah.
That's simple.
That's perfect. No, I think we really talked about just about everything I wanted to talk about. Really, kind of just to highlight some things, right? In terms of, in order to optimize your performance, it is all about taking care of that cartridge. Store it properly. Store it inside the clip, right? And then take it out and cap it. Decap time. If you're a water-based ink, not as much of a problem. We've seen customers leave those out overnight, and depending if it's not a dusty environment, they're fine. But definitely solvent-based inks, 10 minutes or more, you said. You should take that cartridge out, put it inside the clip, and then making sure you wipe it properly with lint-free wipes, preferably with a soft background so you can really kind of push that cartridge in, so that kind of helps get it deeper inside the nozzles, basically, to loosen it out. When it comes to any types of cleaning or solvent solutions, stick with the base, right? Kind of to keep it simple. So like a water-based ink, you can use a little bit of water. If it's one of our ethanol-based inks, you can use a little bit of ethanol. I would personally recommend just calling Charles's team before you start getting involved with any kind of cleaners. They're available 833-9 coding, extension 2, and they can help you. And if you're not able to get that cartridge cleaned up, if you're having issues with it, they can try to recover it here in our facility. But that's really it. Just kind of wanted to have a great conversation with you, Charles, around, at the end of the day, this is the core of our business. This is the core of what we're trying to accomplish for customers, what we're trying to provide customers. We truly believe in this technology based on our experience over the last 2 decades in terms of what we've seen. And of course, the other technologies out there have a place, of course, but for a lot of what we see, and we'll tell you if TIJ is not right for you, we'll be the first to tell you, because Charles will come yell at me and my team if we sell you a printer that isn't right for you. Then I get to hear it from Charles. So, but that's it. We're here to keep coding simple. Charles, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Q, thank you. Second episode here in the studio. Like, comment, subscribe, all the things, and that's basically it.
And Q, I want you to make sure to take some of those that he did that and put them over his head so he's pointing in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for joining us. I really appreciate that. Don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions, anything that we can help with.